decided they're co-sponsors of the session here today. And one of them is the Center for Child Public Policy that Leslie is the director of. But it is also the case that we're fortunate to have the North Carolina STEM Center, North Carolina Science, Mathematics, and Tech Education Center, as also one of the co-sponsors of it, along with the Sanford School. So I thank those organizations and their leadership, and Sam in the case of the STEM Center, for his willingness to co-sponsor this event today. Sam himself, the center that he is head of, is dedicated to the advancement of science, math, and technology in the schools of North Carolina and around the nation. The North Carolina STEM Learning Network operates out of that center. And prior to that appointment, Sam was Vice President for Program and Policy of EdGate and was the first Executive Director of the University of North Carolina Center for School Leadership Development. But the thing I would like note about Sam is that he earned the RJR Nabisco Foundation's China Breaker Award for implementing educational change and was named North Carolina's Outstanding Community Educator. I think he's the only China Breaker winner I've ever heard. But we all know what that means. It means he gets things done that are impossible to get done. He is a member of the board of the James B. Hunt Institute for Educational Leadership and Policy, and active in education. He's a lifetime educator. He has served as head of a number of different organizations in the field, and it's an honor to have Sam here today. He is one of the leading educators in North Carolina, worked for many years with Governor Jim Hunt, who many of you all will know, and know Jim Hunt's reputation as one of North Carolina's great educators, great governors, especially in the field of education. He launched, what's the program for pre-kindergarten?
Smart Start.
Smart Start. I mean, it was Jim Hunt's idea. He launched it, made it work, and it's still going. So in any event, Sam, thank you very much for your help in spreading the word about this afternoon. And I'd like you now, if you would, introduce Eli.
It is a pleasure to introduce Eli. I first called him Eli, but I learned quickly it's Eli Hurvitz. I spent some time trying to find out what I could about him and his work, and it's vast. He's been involved in so many things for decades now and has made such a significant difference in so many ways. He supports education, and I will read a couple of things to you because I found they were so striking. But he does it also in finding a way to finance the catalytic use of philanthropy. And if I learned some things just earlier, a few minutes ago, about, if I may use the term, buildings that he has led the way to constructing in Israel. We all know that's a pretty difficult environment. It's a little bit different from working in North Carolina. They have struggles and they have security issues. They are constantly involved with defending themselves, and but yet I believe what I've read, that a lot of new and good things are going to happen there. I want to read to you a vision mission statement. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I felt like it tells a story. And it's from the Trump Foundation. That's the Eddie and Jules Trump Foundation. When I was asked to do this and I was introduced to the Trump Foundation, I thought, I don't know. I checked with my boss, Dr. Muglia, and we determined that it was a good thing. So, but it reads this way: we're convinced that excellence is a choice, a right, and a way of life. We therefore aspire to enable every student in Israel who is willing and able to learn mathematics and science at the highest level possible. We do so in order to help maximize a potential and to open the door of a better future for individuals, their families, and the communities they live in, as well as for the prosperity of Israel. Human talent has always been Israel's most valuable resource, North Carolina's most valuable resource, the world's most valuable resource. The pioneers who made the desert bloom, followed by courageous soldiers who defend the nation, and then came groundbreaking scientists and entrepreneurs who are creating our startup nation. I like that. I think it says a lot, and it says a lot about you. Eli is our speaker today. He's been at the forefront of philanthropy and social entrepreneurship in Israel for the last decade, but I think it's been longer than that, if I got all the dates correct. He was one of the founders of the Israel Institute for School Leadership. Leadership makes a difference. He led a project that provides tutoring for high school students nationwide. I'm going to find the email address for that and advertise it here in North Carolina. Serves on various boards, mainly those, or not only those, but certainly some boards that are focused on education and strengthening the teaching corps in Israel. From 2000 to 2011, he served as the deputy director of the Rothschild Family Foundation. He has been a force for excellence in education in Israel with a focus on math and science. We call it STEM here. Some say that's strategies or science, technology, engineering, math. At the SMP Center, we talk about strategies that engage minds. And reading your work, you're right on board with that. We need to hear him, not me. I encourage you to Google and read the whole story about our presenter, because it's really an important effort in Israel, and it's already paying dividends. So thank you for being here.
Welcome,
Eli.
welcome, Eli. There you go.
Well, Sam, thank you so much. When we walked down the corridor, you said it will be short and you'll not say a lot. And I said, don't lift, But that was too much. Now, from now on, it's downhill. Don't know what to do. I hope it was a worthwhile time for. That's okay. Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much for having me here. A long trip, 15 hours coming here. So I appreciate your time. The fact that you came here to listen to a narrative about a foundation that is in a very, very different time zone. Circumstances are very different. But we're a country that was only recently created, and it was built by philanthropists and entrepreneurs that are still very active today. I see on the screen behind me some of the people I adore. So I see Lee Schulman there from Sanford. He is the chair of our advisory council. I can see Kevin from CEP, probably from Boston, and others. So thank you so much for joining. And Joel, a pleasure. I saw the previous people, the impressive people here at the seminar. So it's an honor to be one of them, and it's mostly an honor to call you my mentor. And I know that you have a long list of people who call you their mentors, but I truly believe, and I know that you are for me the one and only. So let's start. Thank you for coming. I'll use a presentation, and you'll have a much easier life than I, because you'll be able to watch it. Okay. So I titled the presentation, A Startup Nation Prepared. Most of you would know from your context, A Nation at Risk and A Nation Prepared by the Carnegie Corporation of New York later on. And let's start. I'll do that. So, the story starts here. That's the Dead Sea in Israel. Ever been there? Yeah. 2, 3, 4. So it's probably the lowest place on earth. Cassie, you're playing with the presentation.
I'm so sorry, I forgot I needed to share with
Yeah,
people.
I know what you did, exactly. So. And I went there especially for you guys, not just to take you to the lowest place on earth. We were going to the jazz festival in Eilat, and we stopped there. If you're coming in a couple of months, it's the Dead Sea Marathon. Who's a marathon runner?
Many years ago.
Many years ago. So it's an uplifting experience. You actually feel like Moses crossing the sea. You go through the Dead Sea. It's all salt. Great geological research going on into climate eras. The only reason I went there is to bring you some salt. There it is. Some of it survived the flight. Not all of it. Joel, you'll have the pleasure. So that's the salt from, and just in Hebrew we say, take everything I say with a grain of salt. So from now on, the grain of salt is yours. But there are more, and it's really salty, and thank God it survived. So why take whatever I say with a grain of salt? I come from a very different context than yours, very, very different. And I'll try to talk your language, but I'll do my best. Israel is extremely small. I will talk about scale, national scale, as if it's a pilot program. We are probably a bit smaller than North Carolina. So moving the needle is not such a big thing. Don't clap your hands when you see numbers climbing up, and especially percentage coming up. Okay, I will use lots of numbers, and I will use them for the benefit of my narrative. Catch me if you can. When I'll talk quickly, that's a good sign. And when I'll use a sense of humor, that's again. But please interrupt me. I'm an Israeli. I can't see faces quiet for too long. So starting low, but then. Israel of today is highly successful. Why do we need philanthropy? First in the world in R&D investment, third in IPOs in NASDAQ, probably more in the past year, fourth in human capital and research. During the pandemic year, the high-tech sector was 40% of our export, more than 12% of our GDP, more than 9% of our workforce work in high-tech. High-tech is a big thing, and almost 9% of our growth. So Israel is thriving. And I took some pictures from a week ago from the Tel Aviv streets. You could see billboard signs, high-tech companies, startups looking for talent because they need. And they pay ridiculous salaries for 18-year-olds who are just going out of high school or from a pre-army service course. Ridiculous salaries. I'm embarrassed to say. The real estate prices in Tel Aviv now are impossible. Tel Aviv was announced first in the most expensive city in the world now because of recent IPOs and mergers. Hundreds, thousands of 20, 30-year-old millionaires who are just buying apartments as if there's no tomorrow. Why a startup nation at risk? Even when you look into education and when you look at access to knowledge, knowledge is, many years ago it was considered something very important to have knowledge. So Israel in the TEAMS 2019 test by the IEA was ranked 9 out of 28 countries participating. The US was doing good. As well. I'm not saying that there are 20 countries that are doing better in PISA than Israel that did not participate in these tests, but these tests if kids are able to practice what they learned in school, if they learn the curriculum, if they're able to replicate whatever was taught in class, and we're doing pretty well there. So we could be happy about that. So again, why worry? The other way around. This is more complex, so bear with me here. This is something that only philanthropy can do, take data from 2 government agencies and put them together. This is our university students and high school graduates. And you can see that in Israel, you can see lots of things here, but you can see that my parents knew what matters a generation ago. They told me, you should complete your matriculation, your high school studies. It will get you into university and life will be good. That's a simple equation of college readiness, using your term. And that was an equation, a formula that helped probably a quarter or a third of Israelis a generation ago. And then government came in place and doubled. So we are now at 50%. We were 4th in the world, now 7th in the world in access to higher education. We have many of our youngsters going into college and doubling within a short term, reaching a plateau at 50% and then stop. We're not opening regional colleges or universities anymore because the people who run universities in Israel believe that if we increase that, it will lower the quality of higher education, and that's it. So this is a great policy, and it takes us to the top 10. But in every policy, I see that there are many people here who come from policy. In every good policy, and this is a brilliant policy because it's providing access to people from diverse backgrounds, and Israel became very educated in a very short term of time. But then when it stopped, when a good policy is stopping, then you look at the side effects, and there are always side effects. It's better that if you know them in advance and you take care of them, but there are side effects. The first is what happens with the other 50%. That's obvious. We closed our vocational training schools, everything, just to get everyone around this. So now the 50% who do not finish a high school with a matriculation have no vocation as well. So that's a big thing. But we started when we found out that the formula is changing. Because we doubled our education performance, and we didn't double our job market. Suddenly there was a big pressure on raising the quality of schooling and teaching. And in a short while, it was no longer enough. My parents told me, go finish school, get to university, and life will be good. Life were not as good as they promised, because everybody had an academic degree. And suddenly it was important to excel in school, to have advanced, you call it AP here, we call it 5 units in mathematics. We have 3, 4, 5. 5 is advanced. So to have 5 units in mathematics, in physics, in English language, in computers became a relative advantage for graduates of high school, and no one told them that the formula has been changing. And everyone were working on the previous formula for too many years. What happens with side effects is that they also multiply themselves by the fact that it's not only that excellence in math and science became a relative advantage. When people were working on the previous formula, they couldn't care less about excellence, because if a child was struggling in advanced mathematics or physics, it would be better to drop them down to 4 units or 3 units in mathematics, not to put a risk on their chances to finish their high school, so they would not fail. And if there are not enough teachers to teach the advanced mathematics or physics, who cares? Because the only measure is how many kids finish school, not the quality of their education. And that was the main reason for this graph that we found out when we started. And we are a foundation that was created to take care of one measure, this one. That's advanced mathematics in Israeli high school, dropping down by 40% sharply, and no one noticed. We have declining numbers in education all over, declining numbers all over the news. This is just another number of less and less students. These students are the talent for the high-tech industry that we nurture, and this is why billboards are filled with high-tech companies looking for talent, because we were losing our edge. And the big question was, okay, we're a philanthropic foundation. As a philanthropic foundation, we are very good with numbers, with understanding the problem, but how on earth would one solve a problem? That's a different practice. So we had a choice. So we learned everything. We read about a great American secret called the foundation. So we had to decide whether we would become a driver, a partner, or a catalyst, right? We had a choice. We wanted all of them, but Joel said that we need and we read about strategic philanthropy, smart giving, and others, and about catalytic philanthropy, and we decided that we will do our own, but now I will use your terms. So what I knew that we will not do is what we typically do at foundations, and that is to really understand the problem, to use brilliant experts, and to pinpoint the reasons for why things are happening and not happening, and then somehow thinking that we are able to solve the problem. And what we do typically is we give grants to non-profits. Sometimes, in most cases, the weakest player in solving the problem. And we give them small grants, sometimes big grants, but it doesn't matter. And we create pilot programs, and we pay this industry of evaluators who tell us that we're doing a great job. All pilot programs are a great success, with lots of money, lots of talent, and lots of programs succeeding, and the national trajectory is still declining. So we knew in advance that this is not a practice that we want to put our minds into. So we didn't use strategic philanthropy. So we are not members of GEO or others. We don't use linear and logic models as if the world is linear. And we are not frustrated by the fact that pilot programs are never scaled up by government. I met one of the high-ranked officials in Israel who told me, I feared that the pilot program would succeed because I wouldn't know what to do then. And that's a real fear. So we decided to take a different route, which I think was at least appropriate for this kind of a problem. And that's so we took 6 steps, very careful steps. We started with building capacity, and I'll tell you about it later on. It takes time to build capacity, so we have to start with capacity. It's working in our case with teachers and school principals, and at least in the Israeli environment, if you start with policy and you say, follow me, here's the new policy. In Israel, no one wakes up in the morning saying, how can I fulfill someone else's dream? It's not happening. We're not. Practitioners must feel that government is joining them. And until this happens, no policy. They will nod their head and say, oh, great policy. So it starts with capacity. It's working with teachers, and we didn't have enough teachers. We were losing our teachers. Israel relied on teachers immigrating to Israel from the former Soviet Union in the 90s, and we had great STEM teachers all across the country. Biologically, naturally, they were retiring, and no one wanted to enter their shoes. No one. because if you can do 2 and 2 in Israel, you would go to a startup and not to teach. And that was a threshold question: who would become the next generation teachers? Then we needed to create partnerships to bring everyone together, to persuade everyone that they have great programs, but it's not programs that are aggregated and create change. The question is how change happens. And it's not through one program. No single player could solve a problem. Only by working together. It's a practice of modesty. Then we had to create urgency. We used the media, high profile, quite extensively, in order to alarm the public about the chart that I showed you before. Only then policy comes. And everything is prepared. If policy had started beforehand, saying, this is the new policy, people like me would write op-eds in the newspaper why this policy is wrong, especially why I wasn't part of the decision-making process. But this is natural. And of course, teachers would say, thank you for coming, but who needed you? After policy comes a social movement to create a big buzz around success, and then it's letting go of what we do, of the brand, of ego, of credit, letting everyone else move ahead. And only in the 6th stage we started to create infrastructure intermediary projects, big institutions, when people are satisfied with results. So we created a strategy. What do we mean create a strategy? We wrote a 10-pager about how Israel would reverse the trajectory I showed you before and double the number of our 5 units graduates in mathematics. And it was an initial draft, and we shared it with 70 experts in Israel and worldwide, and got feedback and changed it completely. And then we created, with Lee Schulman as chair, an international advisory council with the majority of Israeli teachers. That's important because we need the majority of Israeli teachers. You can't say to teachers what to do. They need to take the wheel. So, and they changed. And the strategy is theirs. It's not the foundations. They create the strategy. It's an ongoing working paper that we revise and revise every other year. And it's always a collective process of creating a collaborative strategy. So that was the first. In 2011, we wanted to work on the talent, expertise, and practice of teachers. I'll give you an example. It took us 2 years to understand that it's not enough that we tell teachers what good teaching is. So we started programs, hundreds of programs, and we collected the collective wisdom of practice from teachers and then put it all together. Not as if there's one teacher who's doing all of this, but collected it together and showed them and said, this is what you do, so this is what we want to do. And they loved it. So collaborative strategy, relationship, highly important. Suddenly, it's not sitting in your room and practicing philanthropy, great papers, writing to the board and so forth. I learned from Joel, and I make my team do that. Every New Year's, they take 3 days writing handwritten blessings to 1,500 of our colleagues by snail mail, sent just because we want to show them that we care. We keep track of their bar mitzvahs and funerals, operations and weddings, and we go there, and board meetings. Most of my work is relationship management. We build communities of practice, seminars, workshops, conferences all around, all based on data and narrative. Narrative is more important than data. We engage the public and create collective impact. One short example. So we didn't have enough teachers. This is one of the reasons for the drop down in the number of, because 60% of our high schools were offering 5 units in math and 40% didn't. So traditional philanthropy, we created a survey to see who would be the next generation of teachers. Thank God we found high-tech veterans at the age of 45 or 50, when the exit didn't come and work-life balance issues became important, and they well, it's an age that you want to give back to society and do something substantial, and not just to work for some shareholder in a company. So many talented people said, definitely yes, I would come to a teacher training program. We learned from best practice, some of it here, the teacher residency programs that are across the country here, where we created a model in Israel and built a portfolio of dozens of programs, training high-tech veterans to become the next generation of teachers, replacing the Russian immigrants who were retiring. We worked on the demand side as well. Typically, philanthropy would be satisfied with this. We will build it, they will come. But we worked on the demand side as well. We created It's Time for Education. It's the largest social media platform in education in Israel. So it's a platform where teachers are able to engage and talk. Teachers are on the bar talking, TED events, art exhibitions. We invented a holiday in Israel, Teachers' Day. It's a nice drill. So we wanted to understand how holidays, the best holidays, and you would know better than me, but it requires a lot. Today, it only requires a Wikipedia page saying that Teachers' Day was celebrated 3,500 years ago in the Bible times. And then when you write it on Wikipedia, people really buy it. And actually, it was created in 2013 and still celebrated all across the country as if it's. The only thing is that we couldn't use our brand. Never. Said giving up ego, because you would never want to celebrate Thanksgiving by Coca-Cola or a holiday is something that needs to be, it comes from no one knows where, right? But not only that, we understood that we need to create a market, not only supply and demand. They don't meet. We train teachers, but they don't find a job in schools that they need teachers because it's a complex thing. So we created an HR company. We worked with government to pay the trainees a decent salary because they're 50-year-old. We created affinity groups for them and created an intermediary with government that is now responsible for all of it, and we moved out. The results are we're quick to move. We doubled and then tripled the number of STEM teachers. This is math teachers. In Israel, the numbers are still up, and new classes were opened to teach kids. That was crucial. So that's one example. We did lots of convenings and meetings and gatherings and dancing all across the country with the Prime Minister, previous Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, and more importantly, Lee Shulman, our chairman of the Advisory Council there. And we use the media. That's a tricky one. So we had to persuade kids that it's worthwhile to invest really hard in their math studies in high school, because 10 years down the road, they may get a job in high tech. When kids are at the age of 15 or 16, to persuade them that within 10 years they'll get a dividend for an investment that they do now, and we didn't know what to do, how to persuade them to make this a significant effort. It's a significant effort. 5 units in mathematics is very high level. They tell me it's second year mathematics in an American college. It's high level mathematics, very hard. Lots of homework, so why bother when you have your youth at hand? So we partnered with the biggest commercial TV channel in Israel and tried to figure out who would help us. And we found out that it were the parents who were very important. And parents didn't know that. Because as parents to 15-year-olds, I felt that I am merely an ATM with a driving license, and that's my role in life for them. And in surveys, that were the results. When we asked parents who is the most significant influencer on your children's decision, what to learn and how to learn, they would say their friends, their teachers, and us. Whereas when we asked kids, they said our parents, our teachers, our friends. That's in Israel. But when we saw that, we knew that we need to persuade parents that they need to push their kids. And we created a big campaign. Naftali Bennett, now the Prime Minister, was the Minister of Education. The presenter, the public presenter, was now the late Shimon Peres, our 9th president, sitting there. So he was advocating kids. Kids loved him. And I'll show you one commercial because I can't. Let's see if it's.
סינוס אלפא שווה, מי יודע? שמעון, אני רוצה שיחה עם ההורים.
Shimon, I want to talk to your parents.
אולי בכל זאת יצא ממך משהו.
Maybe something will come.
הורים, אל תוותרו לילדים שלכם על 5 יחידות מתמטיקה.
Parents don't give up on
מגדילים את מספר תלמידי 5 יחידות מתמטיקה.
לתת לעצמך, לתת למדינה,
Give to your country.
לתת 5.
Give five. So these were commercials going on all, for 3 months, celebrating 5 units in mathematics, presenting those who are doing it as winners. As winners. When I grew up, those who took advanced mathematics were considered nerds or geeks, and we were the cool. We called it cool. Now we presented them as winners. Cassie, are we okay?
I'm trying to watch other things.
Okay, that's my language, so I understand. Better to shut everything down. So when we started the campaign, it was the CEO of Intel. It was obvious. The CEO of Intel, of Google, and others calling on kids to take 5 units in math. That was obvious. No one bothered because it's the nerds calling on the geeks to join them. It's okay. The minute we brought in celebrity singers and authors and poets and actors who said 5 units in mathematics helped me become a precise personality, someone who knows what it means to invest and not to divert from my goals in life and so forth. Suddenly something changed in Israel, and it was creating criticism against us. And philanthropy that engages in high-profile media we awaited this. We were campaigning for additional 10% of our population to take advanced math, from 10% to 20%. There are 80% who watched this and said, it's not for us. Why do we need this? And it's only increasing gaps in Israeli society and there was harsh criticism against it. And that was very important. Without the criticism, there was no debate, and people in Israel were debating whether it's important or not to do it over their Shabbat dinners. And we were following this, and we saw things moving. And it was typical in a Shabbat dinner for a family and a big family to talk and to say, it's awful what they do on television. They increase gaps, it's awful. And when the guests left, the parents would say to their kids, yeah, but you should take 5 units. So that's, that's us. We say what is right, but then we do what is right. Me, it's my turn. So the results of all of this work is we started our strategy with a spend-down foundation. So a spend-down foundation works on theory on 3 lines. One is time. We had 10 years. The other is money. We had a bucket of dollars. And impact. We needed to double the number of 5 units graduates within 10 years. And on paper, it all finished at the same point. After 10 years, we finished the money, we get the impact. We got it after 7 years. So Israel doubled the number of its 5 units graduates within 7 years, from about 9,000 to about 18,000. And we stopped, as promised, and government stopped. So there are no intervention programs everything was moved to government, to intermediaries, to the regular marketplace to take its course. And so far, so good. And numbers updated to the pandemic year. We're in school lockdowns, and still numbers are very stable, and we keep a close look at this. And we should, as we promised, close the doors on our foundation. That was supposed to be the end. Documenting like crazy, publishing all results and failures and so forth. But then we wanted to look at what we were doing. That's we are doing, the Center for Effective Philanthropy. They were here, right? So we are doing the grantee perception report every other year. I'm a proud member of their International Advisory Council, following Jules' leadership, and so we know what we're good at. As a foundation that works with this kind of methodology, you should expect these kind of results. We are praised for the clarity of our goals, for our influence on policy, and for what they call non-monetary assistance, and we call philanthropy. And sometimes we are the top 10, the top 1%, or the top of their cohort worldwide. In Israel, not too many foundations. We have many foundations, but not too many took the CEP reports, and none of them took it as a matter of their ongoing work. But we pay a price for this kind of, and you should look at this, because and maybe it's a sign that we should look at. We do not impact organizations, and they tell us that we don't give them money to do whatever they want. We are not open to ideas on strategy. We are sharp on what we want to achieve. So they tell us that we need to be more flexible and divert from our strategy. I use the term divert, they never do that. And we put lots and more pressure on them to focus. And that's a heavy price that we pay in what we mostly care about, and that's relationship. And we need to take care of this, and our team is struggling with this. Not to end the story here, is to say that every narrative, a nice story, is never ending. It's not a fairy tale story. It's so the first formula of access that I presented changed to a formula of excellence, and now we doubled the number of excelling students, so the formula is changing again. And it's changing towards innovation. Now kids it's not sufficient for them to finish a matriculation or university, or even to excel in science or math or engineering. They need to be able to solve real-world problems under conditions of uncertainty. Computers and robots are able to do all the other stuff, and they need to take another step. And this is because we were left with lots of money. More than half of the money was not spent. I didn't tell you that previously. We saw this. We saw that Israel, it took me some time. Again, data that comes from various agencies and put together. Israel has a very unique tunnel of excellence. You will not see it here, nor not in other countries. We have 9%, you remember the 9% from the first slide, second slide. 9% of our employees work in high tech, and we have 9% of our middle school students excelling on PISA. That's a test that tests their ability to solve real-world problems. And the 9%, we take our excelling students who learn in high ability groups or in excellence classes in middle school to the 5 units in high school, then to serve, we have mandatory service to serve in the IDF elite technological unit, from there to study engineering at university, and then to the high tech. We have an exclusive 9% tunnel of excellence in Israel. Unfortunately, most of it Jews from the center of Israel and male. So 5 units in math was a first step, because we have now more than 15%. Half of them are female students, so and the needle is moving now in university. We doubled the number of our computer science students this year, doubled. Don't know how it happened. And we are moving now very quickly with engineering studies. Just to show you this. So that's our next target. So we have a new strategy now, and I'll come here within 6 years to show you, hopefully, the results. Israel is 31st on the rate of our excelling students in math. That's the best predictor of high-tech employability. We have only 9%. You're off the charts. But I divided it to 4 groups because it's easier to digest when you're 31st. Being in Group D it sounds better. We will never be in Group A. No one will, even if you try. The world is changing, if you didn't notice. I don't know why is it that in China they look up to us. Guys, look what they're doing there. It's incredible. The world is changing dramatically. But we can come, sounds much better now. Technology. So start from scratch. But we can move to the top 15 countries in mathematics. And this is what we will do in the next few years. We created a big coalition. Oh, you wanted to take the picture.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's okay. And I think it's being circulated. You could.
Probably.
Okay.
It is, but it's easy.
Okay, I know. I do the same. Wow, much better now. So we're moving ahead with yet another strategy that will take our middle schoolers, not our high schoolers, to world performance. That's a big thing. And that would be okay. So we created yet another collective impact coalition. We learned actually the methodology of collective impact from FSG and from Carnegie Corporation of New York and others who are practicing collective impact. Collective impact is not natural to the Israeli character. We are a DIY society. We tend not to collaborate. We entrepreneurs. I don't know. But here we understood that we need to move together. So 162 by now organizations joined collaborative strategy with almost all high-tech, the biggest high-tech companies in Israel. High-tech is changing dramatically now in Israel because we were relying on startups that were selling or moving to the US when they moved to the market. But now with digital marketing, they can stay in Israel. So there are huge companies staying in Israel now. Unicorns, that are doing their IPOs here and so forth, but they stay and they employ in Israel, and they need lots of talent. So all of them joined. The non-profits, foundations are now coming in bigger numbers than before, and the government. The new government, we have a coalition government, a new government that is in place for the past 6 months. They decided on a goal, a very ambitious goal. The minister, who is now the prime minister, the Minister of Education is now the prime minister, is an ambitious personality. So when he said, let's double the number of our 5 units in mathematics, that it was only the start. He said that by 2026, Israel will have 15% of its employees working in high-tech, from 9% to 15% within 5 years. And now everybody is working to get this up and running, and high-tech companies are offering, as I said, ridiculous salaries, so parents are enthusiastic about it, so I'm optimistic about it. I hope to be able to come back here again with a success. The jury is still out, and it's a big fear because when you take out your first album and it's a success, doing the second one or the book. You guys write books, right? So the second book is always, it takes time, right? So hopefully within 6 years, I'll be able to come back with something, at least a good attempt and enjoyable ride. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, the floor is now open for comments, questions, either from those here or also from the Zoom group. Who wants to start off? Who has a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can repeat. The floor is now open for questions. Either
I'm Mark Sabell. I have a question.
in person or from Zoom. Who would like to start off?
I'm on Zoom. My name is Mark Suval. Thank you for the presentation.
What?
I'm personally involved as a layperson and someone who had been involved in education for many years, working in Israel on equity in education issues. So my question, I've got a couple of questions that are related.
Can you raise the volume, Cassie?
In the work you do through the Trump Foundation, is there any emphasis on the concept of equity in education in terms of socioeconomic periphery, geographical periphery, and for those that are unaware, Israel has 4 separate school streams of schools. So I'm just curious if that's an area you've tackled, number one. Number two, this has been a great success story that you're telling regarding numeracy and the highest levels of numeracy. Is this replicable in terms of literacy training throughout the country?
I think I got it. Thank you for these couple of questions. So the first was about equity, and it's a brilliant question because when we started, I said that 60% of high schools in Israel were offering advanced mathematics and 40% were neglecting it. And most of them, of those who were not able to offer advanced mathematics, were at what you term the periphery, the disadvantaged remote areas of Israel. Because it was very difficult to find a teacher who would go there and teach at the highest level. So the first thing we did, we knew that it would take time to train the next generation of teachers. So it was way before the pandemic, but we created with the Ministry of Education, that was a 50 million shekel, so almost $20 million investment to create a virtual high school, to allow for kids in the remote areas where fixed mindsets were all around, with school principals and teachers saying, we don't need 5 units in math, kids are unable to do this. And they joined a virtual high school, 1,000 kids in the first year, and they succeeded more than the national average. It turned out that when you provide kids with excellent teachers and kids are motivated to learn, they are succeeding. So what we found out that many of us philanthropists who were eager to work on issues of equity were going traditionally to remote areas with lowering standards, clapping our hands to medium standard performance, saying the matriculation rate in southern Israel is 60%, and we were celebrating it. But we left the strongest parts of Israel to take to excel in math and science. So we said no. Straightforward answer to your question. We were blind to color. Whoever was motivated to learn mathematics and science at the highest level possible, they got a great teacher, and they succeeded. And we found out, we partnered with 52 cities, with municipalities, and some of them were in remote areas. And we found out that if you have a great mayor, with a great education department in the municipality, municipalities are in charge of high school in Israel, then you get the numbers climbing rather quickly. And the national number that I showed you there are a reflection of aggregated numbers coming in from municipalities. And we saw some strong cities in Israel that couldn't care less about math and science, and numbers were stuck. So, and another one, when kids were moving up from 4 to 5 units. The big question was what will happen to the others, whether the gap will increase. And we saw a movement, and it was not because of us and not because of anything we did, but we saw a movement as a reaction from kids who didn't do mathematics did 3 units, those who did 3 moved to 4. Everything was moving up because of the media and because of the buzz that was going on around it. So everything moved up, and we thought, to your answer, that by expanding the circle of excellence, working with a second circle of students who are able to excel and giving them an opportunity. Those kids are typically neglected because they stay in the middle. And by moving them up, everything moved up. The second question is about replicating or about literacy. I don't know.
So Eli, before you jump to that, am I correct in understanding then that you would provide enrichment via technology access to excellent teachers?
Who heard the question?
From what I'm hearing you say, providing access to excellent teachers that may not have wanted to work in the periphery. Was that through technology and outside of the school system?
No. Everything we do is within the school system. We will never do a supplementary job. We're a spend down foundation. We want the test of our work is when we move out. We talk the talk of scaffolding. We need the building to stay when we move out, so we work according to market rules. So we will never pay additional salaries to teachers and so forth. What I mentioned before is before we had our new teachers trained, we had several years where we used technology for excellent teachers in the center to teach kids in remote areas. That program was a great success, but the minute there were great teachers able to come and teach in school, we preferred the in-school learning because of so many reasons. So, and it changed. Yeah.
Can I just follow up on that? Because I was wondering about the pay for teachers. So I understand the foundation was not increasing the pay for teachers, but what was happening? What was happening through the government about payment for teachers? I mean, presumably they were getting excited about some of the things you were doing and what parents were asking you to do. So what happened to teacher pay during this period?
Okay, so Israel invests quite considerably on education. We invest 8.4% of our GDP on education. That's enormous. You said before that we have some other troubles on our taxpayers' money, and our education budget is now 73 billion shekels, and in comparison to our defense budget, which is 59 billion. So education is much larger than so this is a sense of priority. 80% of the education budget in Israel is teacher salaries, and we have too many teachers. We have almost 200,000 teachers. So the result of having too many teachers, it's not just because we have too many teachers, we teach too many subject areas. In middle school we would teach between 13 and 16 subject areas, so we are unable to make our priorities like other countries are able to do, because everything is important, and we have teachers for everything. So what happened with science and math teachers that come at an older age, that was a problem, because the teacher unions in Israel that are very strong and powerful, and every country that is succeeding in education, they have strong unions, except those who do not have unions at all, at the A-list. But what they bargained as teacher salary is to give credit to experience. So a new teacher would get a very, very low salary, but within 15 years, they would get a good salary. But it would take 15 years for them to, and the big question was how to treat those 50-year-olds who become teachers today. as new teachers, but they have kids and families and they are used to high-tech salaries, what would happen to them? Or would they start with the larger amount as if they served for 15 years, but then it's not right because they didn't. So we worked with the Prime Minister's office at the time, and they decided to do two very important things. One is to recognize previous experience of high-tech employees as experience in math and science and so forth, and to compensate for their experience and for their training. So they got a salary that was enabling them to survive, not more than this. The other thing that government did that was very important in this is to persuade the universities to give credit to those who did 5 units in math in accepting to a university. So it's, if you do 5 units in mathematics, you get 35% increase in how your average is calculated. So even if you want to become a lawyer, take 5 units in math. So kids understand it and their parents understand it quite quickly. So incentives were very important. That's part of philanthropy as well. Without that, you could do great programs, but you have to drive demand. So that was also very important. Yeah, it's
thanks so much for the presentation. I'm interested in the moment when you decided to essentially stop because you've hit the goal. You had 3 years left on your timeline, half of your spend left. Why not keep going from 20 to 25, 30% rather than shift to a different kind of strategy that has different metrics in terms of Israel moving up in the international rankings?
Right. Thank you for the question. The huge question is, when should we be satisfied with the result? If it was in my time in high school, I wouldn't take 5 units in mathematics. I was interested in music and with the other gender and so forth, and I had other priorities in life. Played tennis for the national team, but I would never, and I wouldn't want to be forced into this. So there are no international comparisons beyond the age of 15 in education, because Nordic countries and Western Europe in the age of 15 they choose between vocational and academic, so that's the end of the road in terms of education where you can compare. So after the age of 15 we don't know if 15% is good or not, because it's apples and oranges. Here AP is a different level, and in the UK it's completely a different ballgame. Different mathematics is taught, very different curriculum. So we don't know. We pushed to a place that we felt comfortable to align with the demand coming in from high tech, the 15% that we're talking about. When we will have our 15% in place, who knows? But we felt as if we were pushing very hard. I was minimizing the backlash that we were receiving. Lots of backlash coming in, of putting everything. It was the Minister of Education, the Prime Minister, the President of Israel talking to a select group of, I didn't show you, that the President Peres was standing before, in one of the clips, an army soldier, a high-tech employee, and the soldier is coming in. He said, "No, we don't need you. We need you." Okay, and that's for Israelis was very difficult. You know, we need high tech, but we don't need him. And it was a difficult moment. And I understand the criticism, and it's in place, but it's getting everyone to work around one goal, and to demonstrating that if we want, we can. Don't know about replication, about moving to other topics. I think every topic deserves a different strategy. If you work on topics that are long-term, you need to work long-term, and different kind of philanthropy. It's the methodology that needs to adjust to the goals, and not the other way around. For many foundations, they have their methodology, and then they choose their problems. But
this is very inspiring to all of us. More the way you succeed and I will push you on some of the aspects. The thing that concerns me the most is the 5 units of math, partially because that is an extreme goal by definition, and it's also a narrow goal. And that made you effective at being able to achieve what you did. How did you get around, I mean, and you've been talking about that, how do you get around that narrowness so that it doesn't strangle you?
Right. For many years before, I worked for, I think, the largest, the most veteran foundation in Israel, the Rothschild Family Foundation. They are all over the place for many years. For me, moving to, it's like, you know, Olympic Games and table tennis. You know, it's. But then, if you care about impact, and you work for a philanthropic foundation, and I see many foundations investing in education because we all care about education. But in order, and frustrated by declining trajectories all over and gaps widening and so forth, trying everything, standards and measurement, and we follow everything that is, well, whatever we can that is being practiced here and so forth, and gaps are widening and so forth, and every program is a great success. So we didn't want to. Yes, we wanted to reduce gaps in Israeli society and get, you know, peace and tranquility. We wanted this, and climate change and everything. But we knew what we have in terms of a toolbox. And we had to choose a problem at the size of the solution that we had. And even more so to bring we knew that what we have was not sufficient in order to solve the problem. We need to bring so many other players around it. And I think it was important, at least for our context, both in philanthropy and in government and the public, to see that education can move up and not only move down. And it inspired people all around in education that they care about other topics. Now, I feel like as if I've retired because people are coming to learn the model in order to sort of replicate it with their context, with the elderly or with climate or whatever, and they want to succeed. It's not as if the model really suits them. So I hope I answered your question.
Can you hear me okay? I'm
it's like a Woody Allen movie.
Talking to you from Israel, and I've got some points to make. First, let's all admit that our world is facing a crisis, and I think any discussion needs to be informed of what we hear and what we see and what we experience. Two, the key to almost all the problems in the world is education. Your charts have made that clear, and we have to tie education more closely to experience, not telling them ideas, but helping them to live ideas. Three, resources. Mathematics is the universal language like music. It is a universal set of symbols, and it becomes an avenue by which we can meet a lot of people. Fourth, energy. Most of us are not as energetic as we were 200 years ago, or 80 years ago, or 50 years ago. But energy needs guidance. The youth are full of energy, but they don't know where to go. I think they're one of the most lost generations. I would contrast it to teaching at Duke in the 60s, where there was a lot of energy, but it was directed, and they seemed to know more about life because they were facing death. Now, fifth is excitement, but this has to be connected to values and globalization. I'm, in essence, saying we have to move from the theoretical to the phenomenological.
Thank you. The only comment I have, because I completely agree, everyone agrees with you, is that whenever I think that the younger generation is lost, I look in the mirror and I see my gray hair, and I go to my colleagues at the army unit where I served. It's sort of the equivalent of what you call here the NSA. So, and they are able to recruit the best talents we have in Israel. And whenever I'm frustrated, I go to them and they say, "You wouldn't imagine how every generation is better than the previous. They are they are brilliant. Their abilities are what they are able to do. The kids today is and sometimes they let me see, and don't lose your hope. The kids today, they look as if they're lost because they're young. That's the nature of being young, getting lost."
Amazing example of the power of philanthropy beyond giving the money, but really serving as a catalyst. So really enjoyed this. Question for you is related to the use of technology. So outside using technology for remote education and all of that, just wondering how you used technology, whether it was supporting communities of practice or in any other way.
So I love this question because when we started, we looked at evidence. Joel taught me that I need to look, so we looked at other countries moving up the needle in education, what they did. And we looked for the formula. There was a McKinsey report in 2007 and others, and we looked at whatever we could. I love traveling, visited Singapore and Poland and Canada to see the top 15 countries in education, to see what they did, met with the Minister of Education. I can report back that technology was not a major factor in education, in successful education reform, if you look at evidence. But philanthropy was not as well. We had to decide, because we are philanthropy, so we had to practice philanthropy. So we made an excuse that in countries where philanthropy is vibrant, maybe philanthropy would be a significant factor. But when it came to technology, yes, we use technology for remote learning. We use technology for diagnostic assessments of kids, because 5 minutes in mathematics is very difficult. What happened was when kids arrived in 10th grade and started their advanced math, it was suddenly very difficult. And these were kids that were used to excel without making any effort. We have in Israel a value that we call effortless success. We value brilliant performance. So my child succeeding at a test without preparing. Wow. And suddenly they need to invest and they need to do homework. And they received a B-. They never got a B-. So what they did, they were not resilient enough and they dropped down. Many of them, 40% dropped down because they were unable to live with themselves, not excelling, and feeling that if they need to invest, it means that they're not talented. Another topic there was the OECD. They asked on the PISA questionnaire, one of the most interesting questions is, what would determine your chances of succeeding in mathematics? So in Far Eastern countries, the most popular answer is my effort. If I make an effort, I succeed. Here in North America and in Israel, it is the talent I have. It's whether I have it or not. And that's the biggest enemy of effort, because if you have it, it will come. You don't need to make any effort. And if you don't have it, why bother? So this is where technology came in place, because teachers needed to know now where their kids are struggling, not at the end of the term test, because by then it will be too late, because math and physics and other topics are built brick on brick, and if you get a 90, it's not good enough. You need the 10 because you cannot build from it. So we needed technology to help teachers diagnose in real time, to use video and algorithms in order to diagnose the kids, and they work with it quite nicely. It was supported with growth mindset, positive psychology workshops for teachers and for kids as well, to believe that effort is valuable. Lots of, here they call it SEL or whatever, social emotional learning, another buzzword that is now all over the place, but it's mathematics is the most emotional topic in school. We hate it, we love it, we are frightened of it, we are devastated. All emotions are there. And at least in Israel, if you're succeeding in math, and that's a big problem. If you're good in geography, they will tell you that you're good in geography. But if you're good in math, they will talk at you as if you're smart. So it's a defining. It sounds familiar to you. So it's probably the same here. So if you succeed in math, we saw it, and that's the previous question. We saw in one of the disadvantaged communities that we worked in that they didn't have 5 units in math. They were investing in getting a matriculation. And we persuaded them to get 4 Teach for Israel, sort of Teach for America teachers that we trained, and they opened, and then first year 3, and then 10, and then 52 out of 150. So 30% of their kids are doing 5 units in math, and that's a big celebration. But the bigger celebration was that the kids came to the school principal and said, "Oh, now that we are able to do 5 units in math, what about 5 units in English? And what about getting the elite army units to, and what about a youth movement? Why don't we have a youth movement in our school?" And so forth, because it broke a ceiling. So technology was very important there to get the teachers to really understand what's going on with their kids, both in the cognitive aspects, but also in the social and emotional learning. Yeah.
So thank you for this, and I don't know if you have a good answer to my question. You had an incredible 7-year record, and so my question is, what are the outcomes of this now? Are the students through the university, through college, are they being employed? Are they taking the jobs that you were wanting to fill at the very beginning? And what are the employers saying about this effort now?
Right. So luckily in Israel, when you finish high school, you have 3 years of army service, and typically kids would take a gap year in South America or in Far East, just to chill from an army service. So we have about 4 years on average before they go to university, what you call college here. So we saw a doubling of the numbers, and immediately after, the universities were encouraged by the Minister of Education at the time, the Prime Minister today, to prepare, something that universities tend not to do, to prepare in advance and to a doubling number of candidates to their engineering and computer science, and not just to raise the bar and to accept the same portion, because if they did that, again, the periphery or the gaps would still be wide. So they got from government hundreds of millions of shekels to double the positions in our engineering schools, and they to increase by 40%. They managed to do it, and now they're moving towards an increase of 80%, and it's happening. We see the numbers climbing quite quickly, and universities are filled up with graduates coming, and they come. When we started, we commissioned a longitudinal research to prove that if you take 5 units or 4 units in math, what would happen to you 20 years down the road? And we showed that it will be a 40% difference in salaries, regardless of your profession. Even if you're a lawyer, it would be almost 40% difference. So it persuaded. And now we did a research of what would happen to universities when the graduates would come. So it alarmed them to see that indeed they're coming, and so they prepared in advance. They brought back some of the postdocs from here and other places, created labs for them in order to be able to teach in Israel, and the numbers are are climbing. We will reach 15% within the next 5 years, hopefully. It looks as if.
Well, we're out of time. I don't know, Frank, go ahead.
To which extent have you been able to reach the Arab population of Israel?
Yeah, sure, of course. Of the 50 cities, municipalities we work with, many of them are Al-Fahim and Kafar Kana and Khura and other Arab localities. We find great leadership on the local level, great teachers who have no other alternative but to teach, who are educated in the best universities in Israel. And in terms of 5 units in mathematics, the numbers and percentage is climbing, and it makes us proud and them as well. When it comes to the PISA, to the high order thinking skills, modeling and reasoning and argumentation and so forth, that's much more difficult because teaching practices in the more traditional areas of Israel are more traditional. They're mostly chalk and talk and teacher talking most of the time. And there we engage in all over the place with communities of practice of teachers documenting their practice from within, bringing evidence from classroom, but it takes more time. On PISA, less than 1% of the Arab students are excelling. That's embarrassing. And when these numbers were published, many Arab leaders were interested in changing this. The biggest problem with PISA is that no one knows what PISA is, because it's a sample test that is being given to someone, and no one on the education realm is really knowledgeable about what is measured. So you are failing in a test that you never met before, and you feel ashamed, but you don't know for what. So it takes some time and effort to bring tools and measures and practices in place. It will be easier for us to move the needle in the Arab community because less than 1% moving up will be quicker. But in mathematics on PISA, the average score for the Jewish students in Israel is 490. That's the OECD average. Arab students in Israel do 379. That's the lowest end of the PISA rank, much below anyone else. The government decided to reduce, on a goal to reduce the gaps between Jews and Arabs on PISA by 30% until 2026. Good for them. It sounds ambitious, 30% within a few years. 30% would get, if the Jews are not moving, from 379 to 411. That's where Saudi Arabia and Dubai and others are now. So we have a long way to go with the Arab community of Israel, and you're absolutely right for asking the question. We're doing our best there.
Thank you all for coming. I thank you for the questions that you asked, and I thank Sam for his cooperation, helping to co-sponsor it, and Leslie, if she's still here. Thank you very much for that. And finally, most of all, thank Eli for flying here 15 hours so that he could talk to us and enlighten us about what he's been doing. It's an amazing story. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.